The IM title is the second most prestigious title in chess, and in 1 year it's going to be mine, or at least that's what my goal is. The last 3 months I've played 4 tournaments and I'm now at a peak rating of 2307. My most important win came in the under 20 Swedish Championship. After tying for first place across 9 rounds, I claimed the title in a dramatic tiebreak. The victory qualifies me for the top division next year, giving me a shot at becoming the senior Swedish champion. However, there's just a teeny tiny problem. In the last 3 years, the junior champion has gotten last place every single time. And they weren't even playing badly, the opposition was just too strong. But how will I be able to change that when you could argue I'm currently the weakest of all 3 of those junior champions? My goal is to become an international master by then. But how will I achieve that? The first step will be to play as many tournaments as possible. As of recording, tomorrow I am flying to Budapest, and after which I will go by car with my friend to Romania, where we will play a very strong 2-day rapid tournament with over 20 grandmasters. After that, we go back and take a plane to Montenegro, where we will play in the European Junior Championship. After that, I'll try to continue playing as much as possible, but the truth is, only competing won't be enough if I want to become an IM. I also need to study chess. But instead of training the normal conventional way, like studying tactics, openings, playing games all in the same day, I want to do something different. I want to focus on one singular concept each week, and by the end of the week I will summarize it in an article on my Leech's blog or my website. This way you can also learn what I learned. It could be a concept like a pawn structure or an opening or a type of endgame, and I just think it can be really fun but also very educational. And so I figured, why not start today? I haven't studied anything this week or like focus on one singular thing, but I did play a tournament. I also posted a video about the IQP, which is the isolated queen's pawn. It's a pawn structure and I find it very fascinating. And so I was thinking maybe I can do another pawn structure today. And so I've taken inspiration from some games I had during the tournament, and I wanted to look at this pawn structure called the Carlsbad. It looks like this. It can occur for both colors. It's one of the most common and popular pawn structures there is. Basically, the imbalance is that white, or one of the colors, has this E pawn, while black has a C pawn. It's common in a lot of openings. Primarily, you can find it in, for example, the Queen's Gambit Declined, which looks something like this. And here you can take as white, take, and here we have a Carlsbad structure, as you can tell by the pawns. It can also occur in openings like, for example, the exchange Caro-Kann, except this time it's the colors reversed. So you have an E pawn and we have a C pawn. Now I'm going to go through 2 ideas for white and 3 as black that you really need to know. And these helped me a lot during the tournament when I actually got these structures and helped me win both games. So, shall we look at my first game I had in this? And I will tell you the ideas as we go. I was black and my opponent played e4, to which I opened up with the Caro-Kann. I knew he was gonna go for the exchange Caro-Kann, which looks like this. And here he played bishop d3. This is the main move. I was expecting him to play something like knight f3, as I'd seen he played some games like this. And after knight c6, there's knight e5, with ideas of going bishop b5, and it would end up something along these lines. Which would not really be a Carlsbad structure, because white can often take like this, or for example, let's say c3, there's this kind of structure. However, he didn't do that. He played bishop d3, which is the main move. Now, I went for this knight f6 line. It's not the main line, but there is an idea to this. Because after c3, which he played, I can go bishop g4 and develop this bishop early. Because if I go knight c6, there's bishop f4 here, and there's bishop g4 here, but there's a bit of a difference now, because I am not able to go queen c7 and defend the pawn. The difference being that if they go queen b3 here, I can go queen c7 and defend it, which is the main line, but instead he played knight f3, which is a surprising move to me, because usually you would want to go knight e2 in these structures. That's the point of developing early with the bishop. By putting the knight here, it's pinned and you can't really block it unless you lose a tempo. In this position, I decided to go for queen c7. I could also go e6, but I wanted to avoid moves like queen a4 here. And after knight c6, there's knight e5. And as you can see, the knight is no longer trapped to the queen. And by going queen c7, if he goes here, I can now go bishop d7. And when he goes back, I can go something along these lines and try to push for e5, which will lead to, okay, for example, now I can't go e5 because after takes, white is simply winning, and not immediately rook e1, but if you're able to go rook e1, my king is very weak. However, I can simply go e6 and try to prepare that. Anyway, he instead went bishop e3, which surprised me. He is just simply preparing a normal Carlsbad structure here, which I was quite happy with, because this bishop on d3 is a bit misplaced, because now the knight is pinned, as I mentioned. Here went knight c6, and after h3, which he played, I simply drop back. It doesn't really do anything because g4 is not a threat, I just go back. Here he went knight bd2. He's defending this one and preparing to move the queen out of the way, and so this one won't be doubled, but I simply went e6, preparing to develop the bishop. Here he castled, and now I'm on bishop d6. Now here we have developed all our pieces, only castle is left, so let's talk about some of the ideas. So for me, there are two main ideas. One is to go for a minority attack. This is the most famous idea. So what we want to do is we want to play a6, b5, rook b8, b4. Something along those lines, and then exchange this pawn. Because if we get a position where we can exchange these pawns on c3, the c3 pawn will become weak, and we want that. Then the second idea, which is less achievable in this position, would be an e5 break. This is more common when we've developed the knight to e7, because then we can prepare it with f6. However, there are ideas where this is applicable. For example, let's say he goes bishop g5 here. He wants to take on f6 and ruin my pawn structure. Well, a lot of times in this position I can go knight d7, and now I'm able to go f6 with a tempo, and then e5 is a possibility. But in this position he instead went back to e2 with the bishop. And now I was very happy, because he's lost a tempo, which means I'm basically playing this as white. So I definitely have a slight advantage. I castled, and here he went a move that surprised me. He went knight e1. It makes a lot of sense because he wants to exchange those and he wants to get to this d3 square. That is one of the main ideas for white. You want to get the knight here because then it controls this important b4 square, so when I play b5, b4, his knight covers it. It also covers the very important e5 square, which prevents my idea of e5 and also allows him to maybe put a knight there. Additionally, a knight on d3 is able to sometimes put itself on c5. This is one of the main ideas. So for example, let's play some moves, and let's say I go here, here, here. Now white can a lot of the times go something along the lines of b4, and knight c5 is coming next, and even though this pawn is weak, it's not that easy targeting it. In this position I didn't indeed take care. I should have probably kept the bishops on the board, but I thought I like this position, I'll go for this. And then here I went rook b8 with the same idea of going b5. He went knight d3, and here I don't really want to play b5 just yet, because then, as I mentioned, b4. Now this square is very weak. So instead I went knight e4. And the point is now this square is kind of defended. And so if you play something like this, now b5 is possible. Because here I can, for example, take with the knight. And this looks quite fine. And you cannot go b4 either, because then this one's hanging. And so in this position he took, and here I was expecting him to go something along the lines of knight c5, to which I would likely take and play f5, and I have some sort of imbalance here. I can push f4, create a kingside attack. It's a very typical idea. Also, this knight e4 idea, or knight e5 if you're white, is a very typical idea that you want to reinforce it with f5 and go like that. However, he played knight e1, which surprised me. It's not a good move, and that is because it's totally restricted here. He simply didn't want to exchange off, because that would allow me to create an attack, and since he was a slightly weaker player, he was a bit scared of that. Here I went f5 anyway, and what he had calculated was f4 here. And the point is basically, if I take, he's very happy, because now this e5 square is defended, and even though there are some dark square weaknesses, this is definitely quite okay for him. If f3, which looks more combative because you're threatening to take here, doesn't quite work because of f4. And now I'm attacking this bishop in between. You can drop back and I push e3. And so we have f4, and now I do this attack b5. And just to quickly go through it, I clearly have advantage here because I've got a passed pawn, and I maneuver my knight around, put some pressure on this f4 pawn. And after some time, we enter this endgame. He actually manages to equalize back here because I allowed too much counterplay, but I still managed to win this because in the end, I'm able to, in the time pressure, find this tactic, king g2, and now this rook takes c3. The point being that if he takes back, he loses the defense of this a6 rook, and I can simply take. And after here, it's simply a winning endgame. He cannot quite take here because I can go with my king around over here. So, we can now look at my other game. This was as white, and here I played knight f3. Now, my opponent wanted to avoid playing against the Catalan. I was not even planning to play the Catalan, but that is my typical move. So here he played this strange move a6. And the idea is that if I play g3 here, there are some b5 ideas, which is very combative. However, I was actually planning to not go for the Catalan anyway, and on d5, I wanted to go knight c3. And so on a6, I can simply go knight c3, and now there's d5. This is a typical Janowski kind of structure, which basically becomes the Carlsbad, as you can see here. Once again, with a knight on f3. A lot of the time, I would rather want my knight on e2, but on f3, it's also good, because then it controls the c5 square. Here, he played bishop e6. It was still in theory. I played e3, knight bd7, bishop d3, bishop d6, and here I wanted to kind of get out of theory. I think the main move is simply castle or queen c2, but I went rook c1, and here I played this unique move, queen b8. It's a smart idea. You're getting out of the pin, and also you're preparing c6, which then controls this diagonal and prevents bishop f4 ideas. For example, on h6, I was considering I can go here, but a lot of the time, bishop f4 is actually a good move. Because if takes, I have good control over this square, and there's also f5 as a threat here, which traps the bishop. Anyway, after queen b8, I went h3, which is just generally quite a good move. And here he played c6. If you were to play h6, once again, bishop f4 is quite decent. However, this kind of prevents that. So if he goes h6 next, let's say I castle, h6, I can no longer go bishop f4 because his queen is defending that, so there's an extra piece. However, after c6, I went for this move. Probably not the best. The best would be to play knight e2. And I was thinking about this during the game. The idea is very simple. Here, then bishop f4. And now I'm able to take, and my knight is attacking that one, and this is quite decent for me. So just castle, something along these lines, and you get the typical ideas with the minority attack. I can try to improve my pieces slowly but surely, castle, and things like that. Try to get my knights on the best squares like c5, e5, and try to just weaken black's position slowly but surely. However, I went for a3, and after h6, bishop f4 is no longer possible, so I exchanged off here, which sometimes is also a decent idea. Although I do not have the bishop pair anymore, the knights can be very annoying. As you can see, knight c5 is on the way, and so he plays knight d7 to prevent that. And here I went castle, and now he made a mistake. You should simply castle here, and after something like this, it's about equal according to engine. However, it is a bit like uncomfortable for the human, right? Because after knight c5, if I get this b file open, I can forever put pressure on the b7 pawn. However, he went for f5 because he wanted a quick attack. But he simply forgot that after knight h4, attacking this one, castle, I have queen c2. And now this one's lost. You cannot go f4 because then there's bishop h7, and this is winning. And so there's no way to defend this g6, I can just take. And pretty quickly I managed to win this game after something like this. And here he got a bit desperate and he sacrificed his rook, which doesn't quite work because after this I have queen c3 takes and then rook e7, attacking checkmate and also attacking these pieces. So I'm just an exchange up and I'm going to win this. So yeah, just to kind of reiterate, as white, or the one with the e-pawn more specifically, there are two main ideas. It's to create a minority attack, it's to create a central break somehow, and for black, is to create kingside counterplay. You want to kind of attack white, maybe with knight e4, f5, etc. Another idea which can be prevalent here is that a lot of the time you're able to play c5. Not really in this position quite, but the idea is that you can liquidate and then play an IQP position, isolated queen's ball. I highly recommend checking out my video, or also my website, you can read there. And then the last idea for black, the third idea, is to control the c4 square. As we saw in this game, how you were able to do that for white. For example, b5, b4, and knight c5. And yeah, that was all. And so tomorrow I'm going to my tournament, and then hopefully next week I can recap some of my games and see what I learned. So yeah, thanks for that, and please leave some feedback both on the website, which is still on the works, and on my videos. So yeah, thank you.